How can a wall of barrels, sandbags and barbed wire still slice through the heart of a modern European city? This is the reality in Nicosia, the capital of Cyprus. It is a stark and visible scar, a line drawn on a map that became a physical barrier, separating communities that once lived side by side. This dividing line, known as the Green Line, runs for 180 kilometers across the entire island, a legacy of conflict that has left Cyprus one of the most deeply divided nations on earth. Walking along this buffer zone feels unreal. On one side, you see the flag of the Republic of Cyprus and the European Union. On the other, the flags of Turkey and the self-declared Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus fly defiantly. It is a powerful symbol of a frozen conflict, a daily reminder of a political problem that decades of negotiations have failed to solve. The division of Nicosia is more than just a political curiosity. It is really a human tragedy that has affected generations. Families were uprooted, homes were abandoned, and a shared identity was fractured. The wall is not just made of concrete and wire, it is built from fear, mistrust, and the heavy weight of history. For tourists, crossing from the south to the north through one of the designated checkpoints can be a simple, almost mundane affair. But for Cypriots, it represents a painful journey across a line that has defined their lives. It separates them from their ancestral villages, from cemeteries where their grandparents are buried, and from properties they still legally own but cannot access. This physical separation has created two distinct societies, each with its own administration, its own narrative of the past, and its own vision for the future. The Green Line is patrolled by United Nations peacekeepers who have been on the island for 60 years. Their presence makes Cyprus home to one of the longest-running peacekeeping missions in the world. The soldiers in their blue berets are a familiar sight, a constant reminder that this is not a normal peace. It is an absence of open warfare maintained by international oversight. The buffer zone they patrol is a strange time capsule world. It contains abandoned villages, decaying buildings and overgrown fields, all frozen in the state they were left in decades ago. It is a no man's land, a quiet, eerie testament to the speed with which conflict can tear a society apart and the incredible difficulty of putting it back together again. The quietness of the zone is deceptive, masking the complex political tensions that continue to simmer just beneath the surface. Understanding how Cyprus reached this point requires looking back through its long and complicated history. The island's strategic location in the eastern Mediterranean has always been both a blessing and a curse. It has been a prize for empires, a trading hub, and a meeting point for different cultures and religions. This rich history has given Cyprus a unique cultural heritage, but it has also planted the seeds of division. The story of its modern conflict is not a simple one of good versus evil. It is a complex tapestry woven from threads of nationalism, foreign interference, and political ambition. To truly grasp the situation today, we must travel back in time, exploring the layers of history that have shaped this beautiful but fractured island, a place where the past is never truly in the past. Cyprus's story begins thousands of years ago, long before the current division. Its location made it an essential stop for ancient mariners and a valuable asset for expanding empires. It was a place rich in copper, a resource so vital that the island gave the metal its Latin name, cuprum. The earliest settlers were followed by Mycenaean Greeks around 1200 BC, who brought their language, culture, and religion. This Hellenic identity became a foundational element of the island's character, establishing deep roots that would influence its destiny for millennia. The Greeks built magnificent city kingdoms like Salamis and Kourion, whose ruins today stand as silent witnesses to this golden age of prosperity and artistic achievement. They established a culture that would endure through centuries of foreign rule. The island's strategic importance meant it was rarely independent for long. It was a stepping stone between Europe, Asia, and Africa, a prize coveted by every major power in the region. After the Greeks, Cyprus fell under the control of a succession of mighty empires. The Assyrians, Egyptians, and Persians all conquered the island, each leaving their mark on its culture and administration. Alexander the Great reclaimed it for the Hellenistic world, and after his death, it was ruled by the Ptolemies of Egypt. It was during this period that the island's Greek character was further solidified. The Romans eventually annexed Cyprus in 58 BC, recognizing its value as a naval base and a source of grain. They built roads, aqueducts, and grand public buildings, integrating Cyprus firmly into the vast Roman Empire. Christianity arrived early in Cyprus, brought by the apostles Paul and Barnabas, the latter of whom was a native of the island. This new faith spread rapidly, and by the time the Roman Empire was formally divided, Cyprus was a predominantly Christian land. It became part of the Eastern Roman Empire, better known as the Byzantine Empire, with its capital in Constantinople. For nearly 800 years, Cyprus was a province of this great Greek-speaking Orthodox Christian empire. This long period cemented the island's connection to the Greek world and the Orthodox Church, which became a powerful institution and a guardian of Cypriot identity. Churches and monasteries from this era, decorated with stunning frescoes and mosaics, are scattered across the landscape, a testament to the island's deep spiritual heritage. However, its position on the frontier of the Byzantine Empire also made it vulnerable. Cyprus suffered from repeated Arab raids from the 7th century onwards, which devastated coastal cities and forced the population to move inland. For a brief period, the island was jointly administered by the Byzantines and the Arab Caliphate, a unique arrangement that highlighted its status as a contested borderland. This constant struggle for control defined life on the island for centuries. It fostered a resilient spirit among the Cypriots, but also created a pattern of foreign domination that would continue for much of its history. The island was a pawn in the larger games played by empires, its fate often decided by powers far from its shores, a theme that would tragically re-emerge in the 20th century. The Byzantine era came to an abrupt end in 1191 when the island was conquered by an unexpected visitor, King Richard, the Lionheart of England. He was on his way to the Holy Land for the Third Crusade when his fleet was scattered by a storm, and his shipwrecked fiancée was taken captive by the island's ruler. Richard swiftly conquered Cyprus, but his interest was short-lived. He sold it to the Knights Templar, a powerful military order. Their rule was harsh and exploitative, leading to a major revolt. Unable to control the island, the Templars sold it to Guy de Lusignan, the deposed king of Jerusalem. This began 3 centuries of Frankish Lusignan rule, which transformed Cyprus into a feudal kingdom, a bastion of Western European Catholicism in the heart of the Orthodox East. Under the Lusignans, Cyprus experienced a period of great commercial prosperity. Its cities, particularly Famagusta, became some of the richest in the Mediterranean, thriving on trade between Europe and the Levant. The Lusignan kings built spectacular Gothic cathedrals and castles, many of which, like the Belle Pace Abbey and St. Nicholas Cathedral in Famagusta, still stand today. However, this prosperity came at a cost. The Frankish elite imposed a rigid feudal system on the local Greek population, who were reduced to the status of serfs. The Catholic Church also sought to dominate the native Orthodox Church, leading to significant religious and social friction. This period created a clear division between a foreign Catholic ruling class and the indigenous Greek Orthodox population, reinforcing a sense of separate identity among the local people. The Lusignan kingdom eventually weakened, and in 1489 the last Queen of Cyprus ceded the island to the Republic of Venice. The Venetians saw Cyprus as a crucial military outpost to defend their valuable trade routes against the rising power of the Ottoman Empire. They turned their attention to fortification, building massive defensive walls around the main cities of Nicosia and Famagusta. These impressive Renaissance-era fortifications were a marvel of military engineering, designed to withstand cannon fire. The Venetians' rule was primarily military and commercial. They had little interest in the welfare of the local population, who continued to suffer under heavy taxation. Their focus was singular: to hold the island against the inevitable Ottoman attack they knew was coming. That attack came in 1570. The Ottoman Sultan Selim II launched a massive invasion, conquering the island after a brutal campaign that ended with the long and bloody siege of Famagusta in 1571. The Ottoman conquest marked a major turning point in Cypriot history. The Latin Catholic hierarchy was expelled, and the Orthodox Church had its rights and property restored, gaining a significant degree of autonomy. The Ottomans also abolished the feudal system of serfdom. Crucially, this period saw the beginning of a significant Turkish community on the island. Soldiers from the conquering army were given land, and migrants from Anatolia were encouraged to settle. For the next 3 centuries, Greek and Turkish Cypriots lived together in a complex but largely peaceful coexistence under Ottoman administration, a social fabric that would be torn apart in the modern era. In 1878, the story of Cyprus took another dramatic turn. The declining Ottoman Empire, seeking British support against Russian expansion, agreed to lease the island to Great Britain. In return, Britain promised to help defend Ottoman territory. For the British Empire, Cyprus was a strategic naval base on the route to India, a so-called place of arms in the eastern Mediterranean. Initially, many Greek Cypriots welcomed the British, hoping that the Christian power would facilitate the island's union with Greece, a powerful idea known as enosis. This dream was inspired by the Greek War of Independence and the growing tide of nationalism sweeping across Europe. They believed that British rule was simply a temporary step towards achieving their ultimate national aspiration. However, Britain had no intention of handing Cyprus over to Greece. It was a crown colony, a valuable piece of imperial real estate. British administration brought significant changes, introducing a more efficient legal system, improving infrastructure like roads and harbours, and establishing a legislative council. Yet the core political desire of the Greek Cypriot majority remained unfulfilled. The call for enosis grew louder over the decades, championed by the influential Orthodox Church. This campaign for union with Greece created deep anxiety within the Turkish Cypriot community. They saw themselves as a distinct people with their own heritage and feared that in a Greek-ruled Cyprus they would become a persecuted minority, losing their rights and cultural identity. The tensions between the two communities were exacerbated by British colonial policies, which often emphasized their differences. The British administration managed the communities separately, with separate educational systems that taught different histories and fostered distinct national loyalties. Greek Cypriot children were taught about the glories of ancient Greece, while Turkish Cypriot children learned about the greatness of the Ottoman Empire and the modern Turkish Republic founded by Ataturk. This policy of divide and rule, whether intentional or not, prevented the development of a shared, overarching Cypriot identity. Instead, it reinforced the idea that they were two separate peoples who just happened to be living on the same island, their loyalties directed towards Athens and Ankara, not Nicosia. As the 20th century progressed, the political situation became more volatile. The demand for enosis led to riots and protests, which were suppressed by the British authorities. In the 1950s, the struggle turned violent with the formation of the National Organization of Cypriot Fighters, or EOK, a Greek Cypriot guerrilla group that waged a campaign against British rule. In response, Turkish Cypriots, fearing enosis more than ever, formed their own paramilitary groups and began to advocate for Taksim, or the partition of the island. The British found themselves caught in the middle of a brewing civil conflict. The seeds of division sown over centuries were now being watered by nationalism and violence, setting the stage for a tragic and bloody future. By the late 1950s, the British government realized that it could no longer hold on to Cyprus. The EOK campaign had made the island ungovernable, and the cost of maintaining control was just too high. A compromise solution was brokered, not by the Cypriots themselves, but by Britain, Greece and Turkey. The result was the Zurich and London agreements of 1959, which granted Cyprus independence. This was not the solution either community wanted. Enosis was ruled out, as was Taksim. Instead, a complex power-sharing constitution was created designed to protect the rights of both communities. Cyprus became an independent republic in 1960 with the Greek Cypriot leader, Archbishop Makarios III, as its first president, and a Turkish Cypriot, Dr. Vasil Kukuk, as its vice president. The new constitution was incredibly rigid and complicated. It was designed to prevent the domination of one community by the other, but in practice it created political gridlock. The Turkish Cypriot community, which made up about 18% of the population, was given 30% of the positions in the civil service and 40% in the army. The Turkish Cypriot vice president held veto power over key government decisions. This system was intended to build trust, but it did the opposite. Many Greek Cypriots felt it was unworkable and unfair, giving a minority community disproportionate power that could paralyze the government. For their part, Turkish Cypriots saw these constitutional safeguards as essential for their survival, the only thing protecting them from being marginalized by the larger Greek Cypriot majority. The fragile republic began to crumble almost immediately. Mistrust ran deep on both sides, and politicians struggled to cooperate. In 1963, President Makarios proposed 13 amendments to the constitution, arguing they were necessary to make the state function more efficiently. His proposals included removing the veto powers of the president and vice president. The Turkish Cypriot leadership and the government of Turkey rejected these changes outright, viewing them as a deliberate attempt to strip away their constitutional protections and open the door to enosis. The political crisis quickly escalated into violence. Intercommunal fighting broke out across the island, marking the beginning of the end for the shared state. It was a devastating blow to the dream of a united, independent Cyprus. The violence of 1963 to 64 was brutal and tragic. Members of both communities were killed and thousands were forced to flee their homes. Turkish Cypriots from mixed villages withdrew into fortified enclaves for safety, effectively beginning the physical separation of the two communities. A United Nations peacekeeping force, UNFICYP, was deployed to the island in 1964 to try and restore order and prevent further bloodshed. They established the Green Line, a buffer zone that ran through Nicosia, named after the line an officer drew on a map with a green pen. For the next decade, Cyprus existed in a state of uneasy tension, a divided society living under the illusion of a single government, with the two communities growing further and further apart. The fragile peace was shattered in the summer of 1974. On July 15th, a coup d'état, engineered by the military junta then ruling Greece, was launched against President Makarios. The coup plotters were extremist Greek Cypriot nationalists who saw Makarios as a traitor for having abandoned the immediate pursuit of enosis. They aimed to overthrow him, assassinate him, and declare the union of Cyprus with Greece. Makarios narrowly escaped with his life and fled the island. The coup installed a puppet regime led by Nikos Samson, a former EOKA fighter known for his extreme nationalist views. This reckless action provided Turkey with the pretext it had been waiting for to intervene militarily on the island. Citing its rights as a guarantor power under the 1960 Treaty of Independence, Turkey launched a full-scale invasion on July 20th, 1974, codenamed Operation Attila. Turkish forces landed on the northern coast near Kyrenia, stating their objective was to protect the Turkish Cypriot community and restore the constitutional order. The initial invasion led to heavy fighting and the collapse of the coup regime in Nicosia. Diplomatic talks in Geneva failed to find a solution. After a brief ceasefire, Turkey launched a second, much larger offensive in August. This time, its forces advanced to occupy the northern 37% of the island, stopping at the line that is now the UN-patrolled buffer zone. The invasion had a devastating human cost, with thousands killed and wounded on both sides. The consequences of the 1974 invasion were catastrophic and permanent. It resulted in the mass displacement of populations. Around 160,000 Greek Cypriots living in the north were forced to flee their homes and become refugees in the south. Simultaneously, about 50,000 Turkish Cypriots living in the south moved to the north. This demographic shift created two ethnically homogeneous zones, cementing the island's partition. Entire towns and villages were abandoned by one community and repopulated by the other, or in some cases left to decay within the newly established buffer zone. The island was cut in two by a line of fortifications, minefields, and checkpoints, a division that remains to this day. In the aftermath of the invasion, the island's political landscape was irrevocably altered. The Turkish-occupied north unilaterally declared the establishment of the Turkish Federated State of Cyprus in 1975, and then, in 1983, it declared full independence as the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, or TRNC. To this day, the TRNC is recognized only by Turkey. The international community, through numerous UN resolutions, considers it an illegal entity and views the government of the Republic of Cyprus as the sole legitimate authority for the entire island. The events of 1974 left a deep and painful wound on the Cypriot psyche, creating a legacy of loss, mistrust and political deadlock that has defined the island for the past 50 years. Today, more than 50 years after the division, Cyprus remains a frozen conflict. The Green Line is still there, a physical and psychological barrier that separates the two communities. The political stalemate continues despite countless rounds of UN-sponsored peace talks. The fundamental issues remain the same. Greek Cypriots and the Republic of Cyprus demand the withdrawal of Turkish troops and the return of territory. Based on a bizonal, bicommunal federation with a strong central government, Turkish Cypriots, backed by Turkey, insist on political equality, security guarantees, and now, increasingly, a two-state solution, arguing that decades of failed negotiations prove that a federal partnership is impossible. This fundamental disagreement on the very nature of the future state has been the primary obstacle to a resolution. The Republic of Cyprus, the internationally recognized government in the south, has experienced remarkable economic development. Its entry into the European Union in 2004 was a major milestone, though it was a bittersweet moment. The whole island legally joined the EU, but the application of EU law is suspended in the north, pending a political settlement. EU membership has brought economic prosperity, investment, and greater security to the south, solidifying its place in Europe. Tourism is a huge industry with millions visiting the sun-drenched beaches and ancient historical sites. Yet this prosperity exists alongside the unresolved national problem. The division remains a constant underlying reality, a shadow that hangs over every aspect of life. Life in the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus is very different. Its lack of international recognition has led to significant political and economic isolation. It is heavily dependent on Turkey for financial aid, defense, and trade. While it has also developed a tourism industry, particularly attracting visitors from Turkey, its economy remains fragile and constrained by international embargoes. Over the years, the demographics of the north have also changed significantly, with the arrival of many settlers from mainland Turkey, a fact that Greek Cypriots see as a deliberate attempt to alter the island's ethnic balance and a major complication for any future settlement. Despite the challenges, a distinct Turkish Cypriot society continues to exist with its own political institutions, universities, and cultural life. What does the future hold for Cyprus? The hope for reunification has not completely died, especially among the younger generations who did not live through the violence of the past. Civil society groups on both sides work tirelessly to build bridges and foster understanding. Checkpoints along the Green Line, opened since 2003, allow for some level of contact and commerce, giving Cypriots a glimpse of what a shared island could look like. Yet, with each passing year, the separation becomes more entrenched, and the two societies drift further apart. Cyprus stands as a powerful and living reminder of how history's unresolved conflicts can shape the destiny of a nation for generations. It is a beautiful island with a tragic story, a place caught between a painful past and an uncertain future, still waiting for the day its walls finally come down.